Welcome to Decoded, the podcast that decodes the design, technology, and experiences shaping our world and planet. I am Melisa Leñero.
And I'm Saeema Melisa. Together we explore the systems, behaviors, and technologies influencing how we live, work, and connect, from human interactions to the ecosystems we are part of.
Each episode is a conversation with technologists, designers, entrepreneurs, and everyday users. Join us. Season 1 has ended, and we have 13 episodes. We want to share with you a compilation on entrepreneurship and data-driven innovation. Season 2 starts after the summer with Christopher Smith, Executive Chair, AHRC, Nicola Gogger, Head of Design at the Ministry of Justice, and Aaron Abenthor from New Material, and many more.
And in this compilation, we talked to entrepreneur Dr. Sam Bailey and the co-founders of See.sense, Irene and Philip McAleese. We talked about how we can identify key problems from data using AI in products to prevent fires and using and reusing data for behaviour change. We also talked to London Green City co-founder John Kermath, who talked us through what is needed for startup to scale based on his experience from the US. If I was just reflecting on our conversation, I'm going to try and think what my takeaways are. But I think you've said so many interesting points. Just wanted to come back to a couple on the female entrepreneurs. So we did another episode on with a female founder, Irene McAleese, on a data-driven company, Intelligent Cycle Lights, and she actually said there's only 2% of entrepreneurs that are women around the world. So that's it's quite an interesting fact, actually, that I was a little bit unaware of until she's actually said that. And then I'm reflecting on your 90% of ideas or knowledge coming from other people. And I'm just wondering where mine is. Certainly my ideas definitely come when I'm sitting with other people. My mind sometimes in conferences will drift off and I'll come up with loads of ideas that have nothing to do with what's there. But people are central. So whether it's coming directly from them, it's certainly that interaction is facilitating some thinking that it could be divergent and stimulated from there. But in terms of reflections of takeaways, I've taken quite a few. I'll try and make them 3. So one is a very clear ecosystem that you've laid out. And it seems like a very similar ecosystem for entrepreneurs, irrespective of where they are, where you've got the entrepreneurs and they could be coming from different places, academia, what we call intrapreneurs, so coming out of companies, coming out of there, and from any ex-entrepreneurs, you call them, the third category.
Serial.
Yeah. And
not to be confused with the other places Serial gets used.
And the one bit of that entrepreneurship, what resonates with me, when I was a student in Cambridge, I attended the talk of Lord Karen Bill Murray. I don't know if you know him. He's the founder of Cobra Beer. And he actually started his company Cobra, Fulham Palace Road, very close to where we are in Hammersmith and Fulham, which I didn't know, but I read that. But he showed how he started many different companies before. Like one was on golf clubs, and I can't remember all the others that failed as such before he moved here. So that failure being important to an experience and is the other bit I've learned. Then the second takeaway was to have a clear plan. And even if it deviates from the plan, being willingness to understand how you adjusted and why it's failed, and having reflection in there. And then the third aspect that I have been that I picked up along here, so as well as the ecosystem and the importance of people, is understanding is actually a difference between design, which is really how we teach. You generate your requirements, so what everything needs to be done for your customer, to go out and interview your customer. And here, we don't know exactly who your customer is. And what we're learning here, so even though you need to understand those requirements, they're potential customers, and they may not necessarily be your customers. So be mindful of that process, but there's still a matching and co-creation process being in there. Is there another takeaway that you would like to add, John, that I haven't covered?
Again, I'll just make my comment about fearlessness. Don't be afraid of failure. And I don't want to say aggressive beyond sort of reason, but when you think of some of the innovations that we've had out there, some of the unicorns that we see around us, they didn't start with people who were afraid to make change, who were afraid to challenge big players in the market. And I think that's one of the things that entrepreneurs can do far better than large corporations. It's hard for large corporations to make some radical changes, but entrepreneurs can. And that's why we love the engagement as well with the corporate community, because they know that, they see that. Today's corporate people see that fearlessness is very important, but yet they can't have that it's having, they can't have that under their roof easily.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. I think it's been a really, really good episode, and we've really learnt a lot along it. I think it's probably a really good time. We've had a very good conversation to sort of draw this to a close. And thinking through my takeaways, what I hear from you. One, that you took the leap in faith from your own experience, really, for biking, and took a big leap of faith from a huge risk, from leaving corporate jobs to starting this program, and that fit around personal lifestyle and choices of your work and life balance. But then the product has really evolved. So as well as being a smart light in the beginning, it's evolved with time. So data has become more available. There's been a huge focus on Internet of Things and the availability of data and insights. And the product's evolved with those insights. And the examples that you've shown us are across safety, but also across behavioral change. I think you've overcome that data sharing problem, as you say, by having to buy into the product before you start sharing your data. So you've sort of already you've already accepted that part of the journey. Is there a single takeaway that either of you would like to add?
I would say that really our strength has been this kind of co-creation approach that has run through everything that we have done, from the initial development of the hardware and the product, the physical product, talking with cyclists. What do they want in a bike light? What do they need? How does it need to work for you? Right through to the many trials and projects and pilots that we have done with cities, looking at how we use the data. And if we hadn't taken that co-creation approach, I don't think we would be here as a company today, because our solution would not be as strong as it is now. So that has to come into the DNA of the company. And we talk about values at See.sense, and innovation is one of our core values. And we always say to our team that just because Philip had a great idea 10 years ago with the bike light, we cannot rest on our laurels. We have to continually innovate. And this means that we bring that innovation into everything that we do. It's not just the product. How do we, how do we do our marketing? How do we think about the data dashboard and the use cases? Everything is evolving, and we continue that innovation process.
Yeah, that's a very great point, because actually you had your touch points of co-creation from the very, very, very beginning, all the way from the idea and your feedback that you got the community to the investment Kickstarter, and then throughout in there. So thank you very much, Philip and Irene, for joining us today. We've really enjoyed the show.
Changing gears a little bit, you mentioned at the beginning, when we're asking you about the process that you follow to develop a product or a service, or in this case, both products, you mentioned that you go through the data and then you like the process that you just mentioned, but you also said, but I wouldn't do it. Probably I wouldn't do it like this again. So what would you change in your process? And I love that you're laughing, because probably you're like, oh my God, I would change so many things. What would you change in the process?
Well, you change the process. I think I have a kind of a bit of a blind spot for the marketing, I'll be honest. I'm kind of the inventor, the engineer, the statistician, the data guy. I'm not the marketing guy. I think what it actually requires is more input on the marketing side, and that needs to go along with the data. So I'm looking at this, going, okay, right, based on these numbers, everyone should have a PIPA, but that only works if you back it up with the marketing and with the information campaigns and public information campaigns. And it's not just direct to the consumer; it's also marketing it to the appropriate the council or whatever agency it is that might also help to promote this thing on your behalf. I think that's the bit that you also need to get right. You need to have that marketing in the mix as well.
Now, that's fascinating. So I think it's probably a good time for us to sort of wrap up the episode. And for me, I think what I've heard is that you've really an example of somebody who's a data-driven innovator, so who's looking and sitting there researching and identifying where there's potential gaps, whether it's on CO2 emissions reductions or whether it's on preventing fires or other areas that you've talked about. And then there's a journey there where you've also identifying potential trends in technology and the direction in terms of cost, so to make these things viable, and you're bringing those two together, as well as recognizing how this is going to have an impact with people. And I think that's a bit that you've just said, because the marketing bit, you're saying this, it's challenging, but you're also saying that these are areas where markets, they sometimes need to create new market and understand, for people to understand what is the value, and that's not easy to do. So we completely get that. I think that those are three really interesting trends. So bringing all those disciplines together is tech, but also understanding the business behind it and understanding the user. And your examples that you've had in there were really great examples where you're transitioning between those markets. And you've got completely different extremes, like the older generation and the students. So two completely user groups in there. So thank you very much for this episode. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think, or if you have an idea for a future guest or topic, at www.decodedpodcast.com.
Don't forget to give us a rating wherever you listen, and follow us on TikTok and Instagram at decoded.podcast. See you!